私を思う気持ちですか？たとえ罪深い私でも愛するに値するのでしょうか？
Hey everyone, this is Nitro. In this video, I am going to be talking about the way to build Yulia for PvP as opposed to PvE. So, Yulia is very much a character that you can only use at 6 stars in truth. She is kind of like Elwyn in that sense, because unless she's at 6 stars, she's not healing with every battle she fights, and that will really prevent her usage as a result. Keep in mind that in order to get her up to 6 stars, you need 300 shards of her if you're grinding her up from 3 stars. So 300 shards would take roughly 100 days or 3 months, a bit over 3 months. So first of all, I should mention Yulia's 4th bond and 5th bond are confirmed to be the rare version of Jessica for the 4th bond, and then Zerda for the 5th bond. So if you don't have those 2 heroes, she's not very usable either. And in terms of her class, you're going to absolutely have to double class master your Yulia to use her, of course. But in terms of her ending class for PvP, it's definitely going to be her holy class, right? Langrisser Princess. The reason for that is very simple. Blade of the Goddess, while also a powerful class, is infantry. And given that PvP, you're very likely to face Landius as a tank, you can't have an infantry attacker, right? So, in other words, you're more or less forced to use Langrisser Princess, her holy class. So, in terms of gear then, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. Her gear is pretty straightforward. It's been long set on the Chinese server, and I'm just going to bring up a demonstration of that gear set, which is what you see right here. So, for the weapon, you want the Gift of Eternal Life, because it provides healing after combat. For her armor, you actually want Goddess Dress, and the reason for Goddess Dress is because it actually doesn't provide any hit point increases. Instead, Goddess Dress provides defense, and it also increases her healing chance. So it's like Aeneas' armor, but for a holy class. For her helmet, you want the Odin's Battle Helm. The reason for Odin's Battle Helm is pretty straightforward. It can remove buffs from another enemy once you've killed an enemy. So removing 5 buffs from a second opponent after Yulia has killed something is a big advantage. And then finally, for her accessory, you actually want the Meditation Ring. Meditation Ring is there because it increases intelligence, and most importantly, it provides immunity to fixed damage, right? Yulia's biggest threat in general is fixed damage that can knock her out of her healing zone. So with the immunity to fixed damage, she basically has a guaranteed chance to revive. So that's why, even though the Meditation Ring provides less stats than, SSRs, the fact that the Meditation Ring does give that immunity to fixed damage, and it does increase intelligence, is what makes it good, right? It's a better choice for sure for Yulia than the Bracer Emblem, simply because the Bracer Emblem, or Swordsmith Medal I should say, increases defense and magic defense, but it doesn't provide any real int increase. With that said, if you have that many Swordsmith Medals and you'd rather give her a Swordsmith Medal, which gives plus 5% all stats, as well as 48 defense and magic defense, it's a viable alternative to the Meditation Ring. I'm not going to say it's not viable, but it's just most people use the Meditation Ring because of the extra 48 int, which gives her higher chance to one-shot enemies. So, the key thing about the Yulia build with the gear that I mentioned is that first you're going to go for the Breeze Enchant because Yulia's biggest issue is mobility. She has no mobility increasing effects. Thus, Breeze, with the chance of +2 movement to increase it to 5, will be very critical for Yulia because she is ultimately a melee character. And second, the other thing about Yulia is at 6 stars, your enchants the breeze enchants that you want on her, you don't want any hit point increasing enchants. Okay, while for PvE, hit point increasing enchants are okay because you don't want Yulia to die. For PvP, Yulia's whole chance of survival is based on the fact that when she is killed by deadly damage, she can trigger a revival effect. And at 6 stars, it has a chance of triggering 3 times per battle. So the basic idea behind Yulia is the enemy kills her, she revives. They kill her again, she revives. You know? Now, with that said, the revival effect requires Yulia to be above a certain hit point percentage, right? And that percentage does decrease as Yulia becomes higher level. At 6 stars, that percentage is, I think it is 80%. Okay. And so, no, sorry. No, it's 70%. So as long as Yulia is above 70% unit hit points, she will have this revival effect. Thus, with lower hit points, it makes it harder for her to be knocked. Well, it makes it more likely for her to either get one-shotted or to stay above the 70% hit point threshold. So that's why you don't want any hit point enchants on her, right? It is kind of the opposite in PvE, because in PvE you don't even want that skill to trigger, period. You don't want your characters to die in general. So in PvE, having Yulia's hit points being buffed is actually important, but in PvP it's the exact opposite. And is there anything else to say? So basically, for Yulia in PvP, with that previous set of gear that I covered, you just want maximum intelligence, and then maximum defense and magic defense. And you totally want to avoid having hit point increases if possible. And with that said, that's pretty much the way to build Yulia. I mean, in terms of skills that's already been covered in the previous video, you would likely go for Holy Justice as one skill. You would probably go for Godly Menace as the other skill. And then for the 1-point skill, you would go for Faith, so that she can heal up allies. You may occasionally choose to change one of these attack skills in favor of bringing her starting attack skill, Discipline, in case you might need a 2-range attack skill as opposed to just purely bringing the 2 5-cost 1-block attack skills. But that always depends on the situation. Regardless, Godly Menace is always a skill that's brought. It's just you choose between Holy Justice, which can dispel 5 buffs from the enemy, or Discipline, which is a 2-range attack where the melee soldiers participate. And then soldiers wise, she has Zealots, which is holy units with 45% attack, defense, and magic defense increase. She has Masked Maids, which does pretty much the same thing as Zealots. And she has Amazon Champions, which can have increased attack value when attacking, and I think 75% chance to reduce enemies' defense by 20%. So all of those soldiers are quite viable on her. You just basically choose the soldier you choose kind of depends on the situation, the enemies that you're facing, right? So yeah, that really concludes this video, doesn't it? Oh, and last but not least, she also does have Heaven's Guard, which can get a 45% attack increase. Heaven's Guard is probably the least likely soldier for her, because I just can't imagine a scenario where Heaven's Guard would actually be required over Zealots, Masked Maids, or Amazon Champions. But they're there nonetheless. Other than these soldiers, her eventual best soldier is actually considered to be the one that is not released at this time, but will be coming out shortly, which is the Unicorn Soldiers. And the reason why unicorns are so good for Yulia is primarily because A, their attack deals magic damage, right? So, because Yulia herself already does magic damage, comboing it with another unicorn cavalry soldiers that also deal magic damage is a big bonus. They also can move without being affected by terrain, so they don't impact Yulia's mobility. And finally, attack and magic defense increases by 10% during forest, mountain, and grass battles. So they do get, sorry, not 10%, 30% at level 10. So they do get increased attack when striking. So this is fairly important because magic damage is what a lot of enemies are vulnerable to, and that's what Yulia, and those are the enemies that Yulia is likely to attack, right? For example, if Yulia is attacking Landius, roll Cavalry, decrease physical damage by 45%. Well, unicorns do magic damage, so it can go right through them. So, with Yulia covered in detail on how to build her, let's show an example of Yulia once she is at 6 stars and how powerful she can be in PvP. So, here we go. In this battle, it's actually Yulia with unicorns against a Yulia with zealots. Now, before this turn, player 2 has used his Leonhard to do some AoE damage to damage player 1's Yulia, so that it's below the 70% hit point threshold, meaning it can be killed. So now that Leonhard has done that damage, player 2 will begin his assault with his Yulia. And in she goes, using the Godly Menace ultimate skill of Yulia's, and that ultimate skill smashes into player 1's Yulia, killing it. In addition, because of her talent, she personally heals back up to basically full health. So, it was a kill, and Godly Menace applies the mobility debuff on the enemies. And finally, because this Yulia killed off the enemy Yulia, its helmet activated, so that she was able to remove 5 buffs from the enemy. So here, -3 mobility, Rachel has 0 mobility, and even Tieris is reduced to 2 mobility. And now, player 1 needs to focus on trying to kill this Yulia. Right? So, starts off with Tieris doing a ranged attack. And because of Godly Menace allows Yulia to do fixed damage to the enemy before combat begins. So, Tieris takes fixed damage, the sorceresses are no longer at full health, and they no longer have that 45% attack increase, meaning they do far less damage. So then, and as a result, Tieris' attack, it just does some hit point reduction on this Yulia. Now, player 2 then uses Wilder at extreme range to cast Regroup on player 1's on his Yulia. Right? And Regroup reactivates her, since all her soldiers were dead, and in addition, it restores her hit points. Player 1 now uses Beast Shock to strike Yulia. But once again, because of Godly Menace's buff, this Yulia gets to heal a bit of hit points in advance. So that guarantees that this Yulia is above the 70% hit point threshold. So, as a result, while Juggler one-shots this Yulia, she revives due to her talent. Chloe comes up and casts the Aurora Ring, which works well because in the first place, because of Godly Menace, this Rachel can't get out of melee attack range, right? So Rachel melee attacking Yulia would not kill her, for sure, especially when this Rachel was going to take fixed damage before the battle starts. So player 1 has no choice but to cast Gospel with his Rachel. And then, at this point, this damaged Yulia now uses her second attack skill. In this case, it is her other ultimate skill, Holy Justice, which removes 5 buffs from the enemy before combat begins. So 5 buffs are removed. She gets to heal up a little bit beforehand due to her Godly Menace buffs. Do some fixed damage to Juggler, but Juggler was immune to fixed damage. And in any case, with the Godly Menace skill, Yulia was able to one-shot Juggler and then heal up basically 2 full, and in addition, since she killed off another target, removes 5 buffs from yet another enemy. And that right there, battle's over, right? So it just shows how powerful Yulia's Godly Menace is in truth, right? With Godly Menace, she was able to absolutely crush the enemy by charging in. And then, of course, it helped a lot having Leonhard and Wilder in this person's team, but Yulia herself was a dominating factor for sure. Alright, so that is everything I want to say about Yulia and the way to build her. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful. Just in case you're not aware of Yulia's skills, I'm going to briefly jump into the game to just show them off. So, Godly Menace. The effect is 1.6 times damage to a single enemy, and before battle grants the effect, before battle, deals fixed damage to the enemy equal to 2 times your int, and restores hit points equals to 2 times your int, and it lasts 2 turns. There's also another buff of Godly Menace, where all enemies within a 2-block span suffers -3 mobility, and are unable to guard, and it lasts 1 turn. So that is why Yulia is so incredibly powerful. And the other skill that was used in this battle was, of course, Holy Justice, which is Yulia's version of Sword Soul. Attack a single enemy, dealing 1.6 times damage. Before battle, dispels 5 buffs from the enemy, and renders them unable to act again and unable to receive buffs. Lasts 2 turns, cannot be dispelled. So, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful on the way to build a PvP Yulia. In a lot of ways, it is very much the opposite of the PvE Yulia, in that you need to roll a very different set of enchants, specifically enchant values. But once you have her built at 6 stars, she's incredible. On that final note, Nitro out.